People always say marriage exposes what love hides. Amaka used to laugh whenever she heard that line. She thought it was something people said when their own relationships failed, and they needed something to blame. To her, love was simple. You met someone, you grew together, you married, and life continued. She believed that until 5 days after her wedding. 5 days after standing under white canopies in Lagos, smiling until her cheeks hurt, promising forever to a man she had loved for 6 years. 5 days after friends danced, families clapped, and elders prayed blessings over her head. 5 days later, Amaka was sitting on the edge of a neatly made bed, staring at an open suitcase. Her wedding ring was still shiny on her finger. Her white lace dresses were still hanging in the wardrobe, yet her heart felt like it had been dragged through broken glass. She had not caught her husband cheating. He had not beaten her. There was no money scandal, no secret child, no hidden addiction. What destroyed her marriage walked in calmly and confidently, wearing the face of duty. A guest who was not invited. A guest who could not be negotiated. A guest who had always been there, waiting. That morning, Amaka picked up her phone with shaking hands and searched for the number of a divorce lawyer she had once saved just in case, never believing she would ever use it. 5 days. That was all it took for her fairy tale to turn into something she could no longer breathe inside. As she zipped the suitcase halfway, she paused, her chest tightening. How did she get here? How did 6 years of love collapse in less than 1 week? The answer did not begin in Lagos. It began years ago, in Enugu, on a night that felt ordinary at the time. Amaka was 22 then, fresh out of university, hopeful and unsure of herself. She attended a friend's birthday dinner at a small but classy restaurant near Independence Layout. She almost did not go. She was tired and broke, and life felt uncertain. Then she met Chinedu. He was not loud. He did not fight for attention. He sat quietly, listening more than he spoke, dressed simply but neatly. When he spoke, people listened. At some point in the night, he turned to her and asked a question no one had ever asked her before. What do you want out of life? Not what she studied, not where she worked, not what she liked, what she wanted. She remembered reach for her drink, surprised, and answered honestly. Stability, peace, a home, one day, a family. Chinedu smiled slowly and nodded. Same, he said. That's all I have ever wanted. She did not know then that they were speaking two different languages. She did not know that the family Chinedu meant had already been completed long before she entered his life. And now, 5 days into marriage, Amaka was finally understanding a truth that hurt more than betrayal. She had not married a man. She had married into a family where she would never come first. She closed the suitcase slowly, and in that quiet Lagos apartment, with the city humming outside the windows, Amaka realized something terrifying. Her marriage had ended before it truly began. The night Amaka met Chinedu did not feel special at first. It was one of those evenings in Enugu when the air was warm but calm, and the city lights glowed softly against the dark sky. The dinner was held at a small restaurant tucked away near Independence Layout, the kind of place people went to talk, not to show off. Amaka had almost stayed home. She was tired from job hunting, tired of explaining to relatives why she was still living with her parents, tired of pretending she had everything figured out. But her friend insisted. Just come, her friend said on the phone. You have been indoors too long. Food will be there. People will be there. You might even laugh. So Amaka came, wearing a simple dress and low heels, her hair neatly packed back. She did not expect anything from the night. She just wanted to eat and go home. That was when she noticed Chinedu. He was seated across the table, not speaking much, not trying to impress anyone. While others laughed loudly and argued about politics and money, he listened. When he spoke, it was calm and measured, like someone who did not rush life. He looked comfortable in his skin, not rich, not flashy, but steady. Their eyes met briefly once, then again. Later, when plates were cleared and drinks replaced food, the conversation shifted. People talked about jobs, salaries, and plans to leave Nigeria. Someone asked Amaka what she did. Before she could answer, Chinedu spoke. "What do you want out of life?" The table went quiet for a moment. Amaka turned to him, surprised. No one had ever asked her that question so directly. People usually wanted to know what she studied, where she worked, or who she was dating. But this was different. She hesitated, then answered honestly. "I want peace," she said slowly. "I want stability. I want to build something real. And one day, I want a family." She felt exposed after saying it, like she had opened a door she normally kept locked. Chinedu smiled, not wide, but warm. "That's exactly what I want," he said. "I don't care for noise. I just want a calm life and a strong home." Something shifted inside her. They talked more that night, away from the noise of the group. He told her he was an architect, working hard to establish himself. He spoke about responsibility, about being the first son after his father died, about wanting to do things the right way. Amaka listened carefully. She admired his seriousness, his focus. In a world where many men her age were chasing fast money and fast pleasure, Chinedu felt different, safe. When the night ended, he asked for her number. "I would like to see you again," he said simply, and she agreed. Over the next few weeks, they talked often, sometimes about work, sometimes about childhood memories, sometimes about nothing important at all. He never pressured her. He never rushed her. That made her trust him. On one of their early dates, walking through a quiet part of Enugu, he said something that stayed with her. "I believe marriage should be partnership," he said. "Two people building one life together." Amaka smiled that day, thinking she had found someone who truly understood her. What she did not know was that Chinedu had been building one life already, long before she entered the picture. A life where loyalty meant silence. A life where duty came before dialogue. A life where love was measured by how much one could endure. But that night in Enugu, under the soft city lights, all Amaka saw was a man who asked the right questions and gave the right answers. She believed they were dreaming the same dream, and that belief would carry her forward for 6 long years, without her realizing that while she was walking toward him, he was standing firmly rooted somewhere else. The years that followed felt like proof to Amaka that she had chosen right. Loving Chinedu was not dramatic or loud. It was steady. It grew slowly, like a house built block by block. They did not rush into anything. They talked, planned, and waited. To Amaka, that patience meant maturity. After their first year together in Enugu, life began to scatter them across cities. Chinedu got a job opportunity in Port Harcourt, working long hours on construction sites under the harsh sun. Amaka stayed back in Enugu at first, still searching for stable work. The distance was not easy, but they tried to make it work. They spoke every night. Sometimes the calls were short because Chinedu was exhausted. Sometimes Amaka cried quietly after hanging up, missing him more than she wanted to admit. But he always reassured her. "This is temporary," he would say. "We are building something." Those words became their anchor. When Amaka eventually found work and later moved to Lagos for better opportunities, the distance grew even wider. Lagos was loud and fast, the opposite of Enugu's calm. She shared a small apartment with friends and worked long days, coming home tired and lonely. Chinedu visited when he could. When he did, those weekends felt like borrowed time. They cooked together, prayed together, talked about the future. Each visit ended with promises. Soon, he would say, we will be in the same city, as husband and wife. They struggled financially like most young couples. There were months when money was tight, when plans were postponed, when frustration crept in. Amaka sometimes helped Chinedu with small amounts when his projects delayed payment. Other times, he sent her money when she was short. It felt like teamwork. They celebrated small wins. Chinedu's first major project, Amaka's promotion. Each success felt shared, even across distance. During those 6 years, Amaka slowly blended her life into his. She learned his routines, his moods, his silences. She defended him when friends questioned why he had not proposed yet. She believed waiting meant something good was coming. People joked that they were already married. You two behave like husband and wife, friends said. Amaka smiled when she heard that. It felt like confirmation. She spent holidays with his family sometimes. His mother was polite but reserved. She asked about work, offered food, but kept her emotions guarded. Amaka tried her best to be respectful, helpful, quiet. She wanted to fit in. Chinedu often said, my family is small. My mother suffered a lot raising us. I owe her everything. Amaka understood. She admired that sense of duty. She believed that love for family was a good sign. What she did not realize was how deeply that sense of duty ruled his choices. As the years passed, Amaka stopped seeing herself as just a girlfriend. She felt like a wife already. She adjusted her dreams around his. She imagined their future apartment, their children, their life together in Lagos. By the time Chinedu finally proposed, 6 years after that dinner in Enugu, Amaka did not doubt him for a second. She said yes with tears in her eyes, because in her heart, she believed they had already built a family. She just did not know that the family she imagined existed only in her mind. As Amaka's relationship with Chinedu grew deeper, so did her contact with his family. At first, it felt natural. After all, they had been together for years, and marriage was clearly ahead of them. Amaka believed that loving a man also meant learning his people, his roots, and his home. She wanted to understand where Chinedu came from. Chinedu's family lived mostly in the east, with his mother spending her time between their family home and the village. His father had died when Chinedu was still young, leaving his mother to raise 3 children alone. Chinedu often spoke about her sacrifices with deep respect, almost reverence. She gave up everything for us, he would say. I can never repay her. Amaka admired that devotion. She told herself it showed strength and responsibility. The first time she spent a longer holiday with his family, she noticed something she could not quite name. His mother, Mrs. Okafor, was polite but distant. She greeted Amaka well, offered her food, asked about her job, but never truly opened up. There was always a wall, invisible but firm. She never raised her voice. She never insulted Amaka. She never openly rejected her. But she never embraced her either. Amaka would help in the kitchen, clean, and make herself useful. Mrs. Okafor would nod and say thank you, but the warmth Amaka expected never came. Conversation stayed on the surface. There were no personal questions, no shared laughter, no feeling of welcome. Amaka told herself not to read too much into it. She is just reserved, she thought. She has suffered. Maybe she needs time. Then there was Ifunanya. Ifunanya was Chinedu's younger sister, the same age as Amaka. She was sharp, confident, and always watching. From the beginning, her presence felt heavy. She smiled often, but her smiles never reached her eyes. At first, Her comment sounded harmless. "So you are the woman that took my brother's attention," she said once, laughing. Another time, she joked, "Just remember, he is our brother first before he is anybody's husband." Everyone laughed. Amaka laughed too, though something tightened in her chest. As time passed, the jokes continued. "You know my brother does not like stress. Please don't change him. Hope you will not carry him far away from us. You people should not forget family after marriage." They were always said with a smile, always in a playful tone, but there was a sharp edge beneath them. Amaka started noticing how Ifunanya positioned herself. She interrupted conversations. She spoke for her brother even when he was present. She corrected Amaka in front of others, gently but publicly. Once, during a visit, Amaka suggested an idea about wedding plans. Ifunanya laughed and said, "You are thinking ahead. Let us first see if my brother is ready." Chinedu said nothing. That silence stayed with Amaka. She told herself she was being sensitive. She did not want to be the woman who fought imaginary battles. She believed patience would soften everything. Whenever she mentioned these moments to Chinedu, he brushed them aside. "You know my sister likes to talk," he said. "She does not mean harm." "And my mother?" Amaka asked once, carefully. "She is old-fashioned," he replied. "She will come around." So Amaka waited. She smiled more. She tried harder. She respected boundaries she did not understand. She swallowed discomfort and told herself that marriage would change things, that once she became a wife, her place would be secure. But deep down, a quiet truth was forming. This family did not see her as someone joining them. They saw her as someone entering a space that already belonged to them. And though no one said it directly, the message was becoming clearer with every visit, every joke, every silence. There was room for her, but only if she knew her place. Amaka chose not to listen to that message, because she loved Chinedu, and she believed love would eventually open every door. Looking back later, Amaka would realize that the signs were always there. They were not loud warnings. They did not arrive as arguments or insults. They came quietly, dressed as normal family behavior, easy to explain away if one wanted peace more than truth. And Amaka wanted peace. There were moments she noticed but quickly buried. Moments she felt a small discomfort in her chest and told herself she was overthinking. Like the first time she referred to Chinedu's mother as Mama, the way married women often did in anticipation. The room went silent for a second. Mrs. Okafor looked at her, nodded once, and continued what she was doing without responding. Amaka laughed it off. She is not used to it yet, she told herself. There were times when decisions about Chinedu's life were made without her, even when they affected both of them. Once, Chinedu informed her that he had agreed to send money to his uncle for a business venture. It was a large amount, and it would affect their plans. He did not ask her opinion. He informed her. When she gently asked why he did not discuss it with her first, he said, "Family matters are sensitive. I cannot delay them." She accepted it. Another time, during wedding planning, Amaka suggested a small change to the guest list so they could manage costs better. Ifunanya laughed and said, "This wedding is not just about you. It is a family event." Chinedu nodded in agreement. Amaka smiled, even though something inside her folded. There were silences that spoke louder than words. When Ifunanya made comments that crossed a line, Chinedu stayed quiet. When his mother excluded Amaka from conversations, Chinedu pretended not to notice. When Amaka felt uncomfortable, she learned to carry it alone. Once, after a visit, Amaka asked him directly, "Do you think your family truly accepts me?" Like she had asked an unnecessary question. "Why are you always looking for problems?" he asked. "They are my family. If they did not accept you, would I be with you?" That answer silenced her, because it sounded logical, because she did not want to appear insecure, because she loved him and did not want to create tension. There were boundaries she was never allowed to cross, though no one ever clearly stated them. She could help, but not advise. She could listen, but not question. She could belong, but only partially. And each time she brushed these moments aside, she told herself the same thing. Things will change after marriage. She believed marriage would make her voice stronger, that being a wife would give her a seat at the table, that respect would come automatically with the title. So she waited. She invested more of herself. She defended Chinedu to her friends. She silenced her doubts. She convinced herself that love required patience, endurance, understanding. She did not realize that what she was practicing was self-erasure. By the time Chinedu proposed, Amaka had already trained herself to ignore the quiet alarms ringing in her spirit. She had learned how to shrink her concerns so they would fit inside his comfort. And that was the most dangerous sign of all, because when you get used to ignoring yourself, it becomes easier for others to do the same. Amaka did not see it then. She only saw a man she loved and a future she was desperate to reach. She did not know that every sign she ignored was leading her toward a moment when she would finally be forced to listen, whether she was ready or not. The wedding day arrived like a long-awaited reward. After 6 years of waiting, explaining, defending, and hoping, Amaka finally stood in Lagos as a bride. The ceremony was not extravagant, but it was beautiful in a quiet, elegant way. White canopies stretched across the venue. Soft music played in the background. The city's restless noise felt far away, as if Lagos itself had paused to watch it begin a new life. Amaka woke up that morning with tears in her eyes. Not tears of fear, not tears of doubt, tears of relief. As the makeup artist worked on her face, she stared at her reflection and whispered a silent prayer. "This is it," she told herself. "I have arrived." Her friends surrounded her, laughing and adjusting her dress. They reminded her of the long journey, of the years she waited, the distance she endured, the moment she almost gave up. "You deserve this," one of them said. And Amaka believed it. When she stepped out in her white gown, the applause was loud. Family members smiled. Cameras flashed. Strangers admired her. Chinedu stood at the altar, calm and composed, wearing a proud smile. When their eyes met, her heart settled. "This is my home now," she thought. The ceremony went smoothly. Vows were exchanged. Blessings were spoken. Elders prayed for fruitfulness, peace, and long life. When the pastor declared them husband and wife, cheers filled the air. Amaka felt light. At the reception, laughter flowed. The food was good. The dancing was joyful. It was not the biggest wedding Lagos had seen, but it felt complete. Chinedu's family sat proudly. His mother maintained her calm expression, nodding when people congratulated her. Ifunanya moved around confidently, directing things as if she had planned the event herself. Amaka noticed, but she chose not to focus on it. This day was too important to spoil with small thoughts. When Amaka and Chinedu shared their first dance, she felt a sense of arrival she had never felt before. 6 years of uncertainty had finally led here. This was peace. This was stability. This was a beginning. That night, as she removed her makeup and sat quietly, Amaka smiled to herself. She felt safe. She felt chosen. She believed that every struggle before now had prepared her for this moment. Marriage, she thought, had finally placed her where she belonged. She did not know that the applause she heard that day would soon fade. She did not know that the same hands that clapped for her would later question her choices. She did not know that the peace she felt was only temporary. But on that wedding day in Lagos, surrounded by smiles and blessings, Amaka truly believed she had reached the calm after the storm. And she slept that night convinced that the hardest part of her journey was finally over. The days after the wedding felt like a soft dream Amaka did not want to wake from. They stayed in a quiet hotel on the island, away from family, away from noise, away from expectations. The room smelled of fresh linen and flowers. Every morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, gentle and warm. For the first time in years, Amaka felt unburdened. No long-distance calls. No countdowns to the next visit. No goodbyes at bus parks or airports. Chinedu was there, fully there. They ordered room service late at night and laughed over small things. They talked about how strange it felt to finally be married after 6 years of waiting. They joked about habits they would have to adjust to. Amaka teased him about his seriousness. He teased her about how neatly she arranged everything. It felt easy. On the second night, as they sat on the edge of the bed eating fruit, Chinedu said, "Can you believe we are finally here?" Amaka smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes it still feels unreal." He nodded. All those years were not wasted. That sentence warmed her heart. She imagined their future clearly now. A shared apartment, quiet mornings, building routines together, creating something that belonged to only the two of them. In those moments, Amaka felt certain she had made the right choice. They took pictures together, simple pictures, smiling without effort. She sent one to her elder sister with the caption, "Finally at peace." Her sister replied with heart emojis and prayers. The hotel felt like a bubble, a place where nothing from the outside world could reach them. Even when Chinedu received calls from family, he kept them short. "We will talk later," he said. "Let me enjoy my wife." Amaka held on to those words. On the third day, they checked out and moved into their apartment in Lagos. It was not large, but it was clean and bright. Amaka had visited it before, but stepping in as a wife felt different. This was no longer a temporary space. This was home. She unpacked carefully, placing small decorations she had bought over time. Curtains, cushions, framed photos. She wanted the apartment to feel warm, lived in, welcoming. Chinedu watched her with a small smile. "You really like details," he said. She laughed. "Details make a house feel alive." That evening, they cooked together. The food was simple, but it tasted good. They ate at the small dining table, talking about work and plans. Amaka felt a deep sense of gratitude. "This is what I waited for," she thought. But even in those perfect moments, tiny cracks began to form. Chinedu became quieter than usual. He spent longer moments staring into space. When Amaka asked if he was okay, he smiled and said he was just tired. She believed him. On the fourth day, his phone rang often. He stepped out to answer calls. When he returned, he seemed distracted. Amaka noticed but did not question him. She did not want to spoil the mood. By the fifth morning, the air felt different. They sat at the breakfast table, and Chinedu barely touched his food. The silence stretched longer than usual. Amaka looked at him, concern growing in her chest. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. He did not answer immediately. He sighed, put down his spoon, and rubbed his hand together like someone preparing to say something difficult. "There's something I need to talk to you about," he said. Amaka's heart skipped. The room suddenly felt smaller. The laughter of the hotel nights felt far away. The warmth she had been wrapped in began to thin. She did not know it yet, but the honeymoon illusion was already breaking, and reality was about to step into their marriage, uninvited, unavoidable, and permanent. The fifth morning arrived without warning. Outside, Lagos was already awake. Cars honked in the distance. The city moved like it always did, fast and careless. Inside the apartment, the air felt heavy, as if something unseen had settled between them overnight. Amaka set the breakfast table carefully. Tea, bread, eggs, simple things. She moved quietly, watching Chinedu from the corner of her eye. He sat stiffly, his shoulders tense, his gaze fixed on his plate. Normally, mornings were easy. Even in silence, they felt comfortable. But this silence pressed against her chest. "Are you okay?" she asked again, trying to sound light. Chinedu inhaled deeply and put his spoon down. He did not look at her. "There's something we need to talk about," he said. Her heart tightened. She sat across from him, folding her hands together. "What is it?" He rubbed his palms together slowly, like a man rehearsing courage. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost casual. "I have been thinking," he said. "I want my mother to come and stay with us." Amaka blinked. "Stay," she repeated. "For how long?" He lifted his eyes to Hayes then. "Permanently." The word landed like a stone. For a moment, Amaka laughed softly, certain she had misunderstood. "You mean visit?" she said. "Of course she can visit." Chinedu did not smile. "No," he said. "I mean move in. Live with us." Amaka felt the room tilt. She searched his face for any sign that he was joking, but there was none. His expression was firm, decided. "Chinedu," she said slowly, "your mother is fine. She is healthy. Why would she suddenly move in with us now?" "She is lonely," he replied. "Since my father died, she has been mostly alone. My brother is still in school. I don't feel comfortable leaving her like that." Amaka set her cup down carefully. "We just got married," she said. 5 days ago. This is our time to bond, to build our life together. Having your mother move in immediately is too much." His jaw tightened. "So you are saying my mother is not welcome in my house?" he asked. The way he said "my house" made her pause. "That's not what I said," Amaka replied quickly. "She is welcome to visit. She can stay for some time. But moving in permanently, especially now, is not fair to me." His eyes hardened. "She is my mother," he said. "I cannot abandon her." "I am not asking you to abandon her," Amaka said, her voice shaking. "I am asking for balance, for space, for time." But Chinedu was no longer listening. He crossed his arms, leaning back in his chair. "You don't understand," he said. "Family comes first." Something cold slid down Amaka's spine. She stared at him, the man she had waited 6 years to marry, and felt a sudden distance between them. This was not a discussion. This was an announcement. She realized, too late, that the decision had already been made. Breakfast grew cold on the table. The apartment felt smaller, tighter. The warmth of the honeymoon days evaporated, replaced by something heavy and unfamiliar. 5 days into marriage, Amaka understood a painful truth. She had been invited into Chinedu's life, but not into his decisions. And in that moment, as Lagos roared on outside, Amaka felt the first crack in a marriage he had believed was unbreakable. Amaka did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She did not accuse him. She tried to speak the way she believed a wife should speak, carefully, respectfully, with a hope that understanding would meet her halfway. "Chinedu," she said after a long pause, "I am not rejecting your mother. I respect her. I know what she sacrificed for you. But we just started this journey together. I need time. We need time." He looked at her, his face unreadable. "This is our first week as husband and wife," she continued. "I want to learn how to live with you, how to be your wife. I want us to build intimacy, routines, understanding. If your mother moves in now, I will never truly settle." She swallowed and went on. "I need privacy. I need space to make mistakes without feeling watched. I need to feel like this home belongs to us." For a brief moment, she thought she saw hesitation in his eyes. Then it disappeared. "So what you are really saying," Chinedu said slowly, "is that my mother is a problem." Amaka shook her head immediately. "No, that is not what I am saying at all." "But that is how it sounds," he replied. "If you truly loved me, you would understand that taking care of my mother is non-negotiable." The word hung between them. Non-negotiable. Amaka felt her chest tighten. "Love does not mean losing myself," she said quietly. "I am your wife, not a visitor. I deserve to be considered." Chinedu leaned forward, his tone changing. "In my culture," he said, "a good wife supports her husband's responsibilities. My mother is my responsibility. And I am not your responsibility." Amaka asked. He did not answer directly. Instead, he said, "If this is already an issue, then I need to know where your loyalty lies." The question stunned her. "My loyalty," she repeated. "We are not enemies. We are partners." Chinedu stood up and began pacing the room. "You knew who I was before you married me," he said. "You knew my family situation. You knew I was a first son. Now that we are married, you want to change things." Amaka felt a sharp sting. "I did not know I would have no voice," she said. "I did not know decisions would be made without me." Chinedu stopped pacing and looked at her with irritation. "You are making this bigger than it needs to be," he said. "If you accept my mother, there will be peace. If you don't, then you are creating problems." In that moment, Amaka understood something painful. This was not a conversation. It was a test, not of compromise, not of understanding, a test of obedience. She realized that no matter how gently she explained herself, the outcome had already been decided. Her feelings were not something to consider. They were something to overcome. "So that's it?" she asked softly. "You have already decided?" "Yes," Chinedu said without hesitation. "I have." Amaka looked around the apartment she had just finished decorating. The curtains she hung, the cushions she arranged, the space she believed would hold their life. Suddenly, it did not feel like Hayes. She felt small, unheard, unchosen, a wife without a vote. The silence that followed was thick. Neither of them spoke. Chinedu picked up his phone and walked into the bedroom, leaving Amaka alone at the table with untouched breakfast and a sinking realization. Marriage had given her a title, but not a voice, and that truth hurt more than she was ready to admit. Amaka barely had time to breathe before the next storm arrived. It was mid-morning when the door slammed open without warning. Amaka looked up, startled. There stood Ifunanya, her smile gone, replaced by a glare sharp enough to cut glass. "You," she spat, pointing a finger at Amaka. "You dare tell my brother he cannot honor his mother." Amaka froze. The room felt suddenly smaller, walls closing in. She opened her mouth, but words failed her. "I'm not sure what you mean," she said cautiously. "I never said." But Ifunanya did not let her finish. She stormed in, her presence aggressive, almost predatory. Every step she took carried weight. She walked past the sofa, standing close enough that Amaka could feel her breath. "You think you can come into this family and just take him away," she shouted, her voice rising. "Do you know what we built? Do you know what my mother suffered through to raise him? And you come here, 5 days into their marriage, to scatter everything." Amaka's chest tightened. "I am not trying to scatter anything," she said, her voice calm but trembling. "I just want us to have space to live our life together. I respect your family. I respect your mother." "That is not enough," Ifunanya screamed, stepping even closer. Her eyes burned with fury. "You think being married gives you the right to claim him as yours? You are selfish, disrespectful, ungrateful." Amaka shook her head in disbelief. She tried to step back, but the apartment felt like a cage. Every corner was filled with her sister-in-law's anger. She raised her hands in a defensive gesture. "Please, Ifunanya, calm down. I never said your mother couldn't stay with us. I only said you moving in permanently now is too soon. That's all." But Ifunanya wasn't listening. She lunged forward and shoved Amaka lightly. Surprised, Amaka instinctively pushed back. The brief physical contact sparked tension, the room crackling with energy neither of them could control. Before the situation could escalate further, Chinedu entered. But instead of stopping his sister, he froze for a moment and then took her side. "Amaka," he said flatly, his voice devoid of the warmth she had once loved. "She is only defending our mother. Why are you making this into a big issue?" Amaka stared at him, disbelief and hurt twisting inside her. "Defending her," she whispered, voice barely audible. "She came into our home to attack me. You are supporting her." Chinedu's expression hardened. "She is my sister. She has a right to speak. You are the one making it personal." The words cut deeper than any argument could. Amaka felt her stomach twist. 6 years of trust, love, and shared dreams seemed to crumble in an instant. Ifunanya, emboldened by Chinedu's silence and support, continued to berate her. "You are not one of us yet. You will never understand what it took to get here. You think you can just come and take everything." Amaka's hands trembled. She wanted to shout, to run, to escape, but her voice was swallowed by the weight of their combined presence. For the first time, she realized that this marriage, the life she had built in her imagination, was already under siege. The man she loved, the sister-in-law she had tried to charm, even the mother she had hoped to include, had all drawn invisible lines she had crossed. The apartment, once a sanctuary filled with hope and soft sunlight, now felt like a battlefield. Amaka took a slow step back, her mind racing. This is only day 5, she thought. Only day 5, and they already see me as the enemy. And in that instant, the first seed of doubt, small but persistent, began to take root in her heart. Amaka stood frozen, her chest tight, every nerve screaming in disbelief. Chinedu's words echoed in her mind. "She is my sister. She has a right to speak. You are the one making it personal." For 6 years, she had imagined this man as her partner, her safe place, the one who would stand beside her no matter what. She had believed that love meant loyalty, that their bond was stronger than family interference. But in that moment, that belief shattered. Ifunanya, her sister-in-law, was still pacing the apartment, her anger unchecked. She gestured wildly, her voice sharp, accusing Amaka of things she had not even done yet, plans she hadn't made, intentions she didn't hold. And Chinedu simply watched, nodding occasionally, not stopping her, not even attempting to calm the situation. Amaka's hand shook. She wanted to speak, to reason, to make him see that she was not the enemy. But every word she tried to form was smothered by the realization that he had already chosen. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely above the noise of their argument. I thought we were a team. I thought." Chinedu cut her off sharply. We are a team, Amaka, he said, his voice calm but cold. But family comes first. You are making this bigger than it needs to be. Ifunanya is only defending our mother. I cannot abandon her just because you are uncomfortable. She stared at him, disbelief and hurt twisting her stomach into knots. Abandon her, she repeated. I am not asking you to abandon your mother. I am asking for balance, for respect, for space to start our marriage as a couple, not as a family under siege. Chinedu's face hardened further. I have made my choice. My mother lives here. If you cannot accept that, then maybe you are not the wife I thought you were. Amaka's heart sank. That simple statement, casual in delivery, carried the weight of 1,000 betrayals. The man she had trusted, loved, waited for, her husband, had not only failed to protect her from conflict, he had actively placed her on the losing side. For the first time in their relationship, she felt like a stranger in his life. She had given 6 years of loyalty, patience, and love. She had sacrificed, compromised, and endured. And now, lying in the apartment that was supposed to be their home, she realized she had no ally. Ifunanya smiled triumphantly, sensing victory. You see, she said, he understands what family truly means. You should learn from this, Amaka. Amaka closed her eyes, trying to calm the storm inside her. Every instinct screamed at her to fight back, to scream, to leave, but a deeper, heavier realization pressed down on her. This was not just a disagreement. This was a declaration, Nahiri. Not yet. Not in this house. The apartment, decorated carefully with her hopes and dreams, suddenly felt like a cage. Her life, meticulously planned and imagined, had collided with an unmovable force. She had believed in partnership. She had believed in shared decision-making. She had believed in him. And now he had chosen. Chinedu's decision was clear. His mother and sister came first. She came second, or perhaps not at all. Amaka's lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to argue, to plead, to convince him otherwise, but every word felt pointless. His mind was already made up. He had rewritten the rules of their marriage in an instant, and she was left to navigate a home that no longer felt like his. That night, as she lay in their bedroom, the weight of betrayal pressing against her chest, Amaka realized something terrifying. The man she loved, the one she had trusted with her future, was not on her side. And in that cold, quiet apartment in Lagos, a seed of doubt planted itself firmly in her heart, growing faster than hope could reach it. Amaka had barely managed to calm herself after the confrontation with Ifunanya when the phone rang. She hesitated before picking it up, sensing instinctively that this call would not bring peace. Her fingers trembled as she swiped to answer. "Hello," she said, her voice measured. The voice that greeted her was sharp, loud, and unrelenting. "So, you want to erase everything I built?" Chinedu's mother barked. Amaka froze. The woman had not even greeted her, had not asked how she was. There was no preamble, no softness, just accusation. I don't understand," Amaka began. "Don't play innocent with me," the woman snapped. "Do you have any idea what it took to raise my son? Do you know how many nights I sat under the sun, breaking my back, sacrificing my comfort so he could have a future?" Amaka's chest tightened. Every word felt like fire being poured over her. She had wanted to explain, to defend herself, to make them see that her intentions were not against them. But the words stuck in her throat. I am not trying to erase anything," she said cautiously. "I respect all that you have done. I respect your sacrifices. I just..." "Just what?" the woman interrupted. You think because you married him, you can come in and dictate how our family should live? You think you can decide who belongs in this house and who doesn't? Amaka, you are a stranger, a guest, and now you are trying to destroy everything I worked for. Amaka's hands gripped the phone tightly. Her knuckles turned white. She wanted to shout, to tell her that she had been silenced, sidelined, and disrespected, but her voice wavered. I never said I was destroying anything, she whispered. I only asked for time to adjust. I only asked for balance so we could start our marriage together. Balance, the woman shouted. Balance? You have no idea what balance is. You have no idea what loyalty is. You were not there when I toiled for my son. You were not there when I sold everything to give him an education. And now, you come here, expecting him to choose you over his family. Amaka's chest felt like it was being crushed. Every syllable from the phone was another brick added to the wall of alienation that now surrounded her in her own home. I am not asking him to choose between us, she said, her voice trembling. I am asking for partnership. I am asking for respect. I am asking for him to see me as his wife, not as an intruder. Her words seemed to fall into a void. The woman's voice came back, cold and cutting. Respect, she hissed. You think I will respect someone who tries to take my son from me? You are selfish, ungrateful, and unworthy of the man I raised. If you cannot accept our family, then maybe this marriage was a mistake from the start. Amaka pressed the phone closer to her ear, feeling the weight of every word like stones in her chest. She wanted to respond, to argue, to scream, but she knew it would be useless. Their minds were already made up. She was being cast as the enemy before she had even fully begun her life with Chinedu. By the end of the call, Amaka sat silently on the couch, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her chest burned, her head ached, and a hollow emptiness settled in her stomach. She realized, painfully, that the house she had imagined as a sanctuary, the apartment she had spent days turning into a home, was no longer hers. Her husband had already sided with them. His mother had already condemned her. And for the first time, Amaka understood that she was alone in the place she had expected to be safest. The city outside moved on as if nothing had happened, but inside, her life was shifting in a way she could not yet control. And in that moment, Amaka realized that this was not a disagreement. It was a war she had unknowingly stepped into on the 5th day of her marriage. She was not considered a partner here. Not yet. Not in this house. The apartment, decorated carefully with her hopes and dreams, suddenly felt like a cage. Her life, meticulously planned and imagined, had collided with an unmovable force. She had believed in partnership. She had believed in shared decision-making. She had believed in him. And now he had chosen. Chinedu's decision was clear. His mother and sister came first. She came second, or perhaps not at all. Amaka's lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to argue, to plead, to convince him otherwise, but every word felt pointless. His mind was already made up. He had rewritten the rules of their marriage in an instant, and she was left to navigate a home that no longer felt like hers. That night, as she lay in their bedroom, the weight of betrayal pressing against her chest, Amaka realized something terrifying. The man she loved, the one she had trusted with her future, was not on her side. And in that cold, quiet apartment in Lagos, a seed of doubt planted itself firmly in her heart, growing faster than hope could reach it. Amaka had barely managed to calm herself after the confrontation with Ifunanya when the phone rang. She hesitated before picking it up, sensing instinctively that this call would not bring peace. Her fingers trembled as she swiped to answer. "Hello," she said, her voice measured. The voice that greeted her was sharp, loud, and unrelenting. "So, you want to erase everything I built?" Chinidu's mother barked. Amaka froze. The woman had not even greeted her, had not asked how she was. There was no preamble, no softness, just accusation. I don't understand. Amaka began. Don't play innocent with me, the woman snapped. Do you have any idea what it took to raise my son? Do you know how many nights I sat under the sun, breaking my back, sacrificing my comfort so he could have a future? Amaka's chest tightened. Every word felt like fire being poured over her. She had wanted to explain, to defend herself, to make them see that her intentions were not against them. But the words stuck in her throat. I am not trying to erase anything, she said cautiously. I respect all that you've done. I respect your sacrifices. Just what? The woman interrupted. You think because you married him, you can come in and dictate how our family should live? You think you can decide who belongs in this house and who doesn't? Amaka, you are a stranger, a guest, and now you are trying to destroy everything I worked for. Amaka's hands gripped the phone tightly. Her knuckles turned white. She wanted to shout, to tell her that she had been silenced, sidelined, and disrespected, but her voice wavered. I never said I was destroying anything, she whispered. I only asked for time to adjust. I only asked for balance so we could start our marriage together. Balance, the woman shouted. Balance? You have no idea what balance is. You have no idea what loyalty is. You were not there when I toiled for my son. You were not there when I sold everything to give him an education. And now, you come here expecting him to choose you over his family. Amaka's chest felt like it was being crushed. Every syllable from the phone was another brick added to the wall of alienation that now surrounded her in her own home. I am not asking him to choose between us, she said, her voice trembling. I am asking for partnership. I am asking for respect. I am asking for him to see me as his wife, not as an intruder. Her words seemed to fall into a void. The woman's voice came back, cold and cutting. Respect, she hissed. You think I will respect someone who tries to take my son from me? You are selfish, ungrateful, and unworthy of the man I raised. If you cannot accept our family, then maybe this marriage was a mistake from the start. Amaka pressed the phone closer to her ear, feeling the weight of every word like stones in her chest. She wanted to respond, to argue, to scream, but she knew it would be useless. Their minds were already made up. She was being cast as the enemy before she had even fully begun her life with Chinidu. By the end of the call, Amaka sat silently on the couch, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her chest burned, her head ached, and a hollow emptiness settled in her stomach. She realized, painfully, that the house she had imagined as a sanctuary, the apartment she had spent days turning into a home, was no longer hers. Her husband had already sided with them. His mother had already condemned her. And for the first time, Amaka understood that she was alone in the place she had expected to be safest. The city outside moved on as if nothing had happened. But inside, her life was shifting in a way she could not yet control. And in that moment, Amaka realized that this was not a disagreement. It was a war she had unknowingly stepped into on the 5th day of her marriage. Amaka had spent the morning staring at the apartment walls, trying to gather courage. The silence that had settled over the home pressed on her like a weight, and she knew she could no longer remain passive. When Chinidu returned from work that evening, she waited until he settled into the living room, placing his briefcase beside him. She took a deep breath, steadying her voice. Chinidu, she began carefully, I want us to talk. He looked up briefly, his expression guarded. About what? He asked, his tone flat. About your mother moving in, Amaka said, choosing her words slowly. I've been thinking, Maybe there's a way we can find a compromise. Something that works for all of us. Back, arms crossed, the faintest line of irritation on his forehead. Compromise, he repeated. I have already made my decision. Amaka, there is nothing to compromise. Amaka's chest tightened, but she pressed on. We can create a schedule. She can visit often, spend time with us, but live elsewhere. We can make arrangements so she's not lonely without taking away the space we need to start our marriage. Chinedu's lips pressed into a thin line. You are making this more complicated than it needs to be. I'm not trying to complicate it, she said, her voice rising slightly in frustration. I'm trying to find a way that respects both her needs and ours. I want to love her, but I also need to be your wife, not just a guest in your family's home. He shook his head, his eyes cold. Amaka, I do not need suggestions. I have considered everything. My mother will live here. If you have a problem with that, perhaps you are not the woman I thought you were. The words landed like stones on her chest. 6 years, 6 years of loyalty, patience, and love, and it had come to this. All her sacrifices, all her dreams of a partnership, seemed meaningless in the face of his final decision. Amaka's mind raced. She thought of the little things she had imagined for their future, cooking together, quiet Sunday mornings, planning vacations, building traditions. Now, all of that seemed out of reach. Chinedu's stance left no room for her voice, no room for negotiation, no room for equality. I just wanted us to start our marriage on a foundation of respect, she said softly, trying to keep her tears at bay. I wanted us to be partners. I never wanted to fight against your family. He looked at her, expression unyielding. You have your role in this marriage, Amaka. But understand this, my family comes first. If that is too much for you, then perhaps we are not meant to continue this way. Amaka's stomach sank. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in with a weight of impossibility. She had hoped for understanding, for dialogue, for compromise, but there was none. She realized that compromise, in Chinedu's eyes, meant surrender. She sat in silence, watching him as he returned to his routines, speaking only when necessary, as if she were already invisible. The attempt she made, the olive branches she extended, were met with indifference or dismissal. That night, as she lay awake, Amaka replayed the conversation in her head. She thought about her hopes, her sacrifices, the 6 years she had devoted to this man, and a cold, painful realization settled in. Love alone was not enough to make him see her as equal. Her attempt to find middle ground had failed, and in the quiet darkness of their apartment in Lagos, Amaka began to understand that the battle she thought was about moving in a mother was really about control, loyalty, and whose voice mattered most in the marriage. For the first time, she wondered if staying meant losing herself completely. Amaka sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor, her thoughts swirling like a storm. The apartment was quiet now, almost eerily so, but the heaviness in her chest refused to lift. She had tried to compromise, to reason with Chinedu, to protect her place in their home, and yet every attempt had been met with dismissal or cold authority. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up, hoping for a small comfort, and saw her sister's name flashing on the screen. With a deep breath, she answered. Amaka. Her sister's voice was calm but gentle, the kind of voice that carried both concern and authority. Hi. I need to talk, Amaka said, her voice trembling slightly. I know, her sister replied, without hesitation. Tell me everything, every detail. I want to hear it all. And so Amaka poured out her heart. She told her sister about the breakfast confrontation, about Ifunanya storming in, about Chinedu siding with his family instead of her. She recounted the phone call from his mother, the cold silence in their apartment, the failed attempts at compromise. Every word felt heavy, yet it was a relief to speak them aloud to someone who would listen. Her sister listened quietly, without interruption, absorbing every sentence. When Amaka finished, she let out a long sigh. "Amaka," her sister said finally, her voice steady but probing, "tell me, can you see yourself living like this for the next 10 years, 20 years, sharing your marriage bed with in-law drama, silence, and a husband who does not stand with you?" The question struck Amaka like a thunderclap. She stared at the ceiling, imagining a future stretched out in years of tension, compromise, and emotional neglect. Nights spent in the same bed as a man who would not defend her, mornings shadowed by a mother-in-law's demands, afternoons punctuated by Ifunanya's passive-aggressive warnings. Could she endure that? Her sister continued, her tone firm. "Because if you cannot see a life like that being happy, then you already know the answer. You do not need my permission to leave. You only need to acknowledge the truth you feel in your heart." Amaka's mind raced. She had always believed that love would be enough to weather any storm, that patience and loyalty would eventually secure a place in Chinedu's heart and home. But now she saw the cracks in that belief. The distance, the silence, the favoritism, these were not temporary. They were warnings, markers of a life she might spend tiptoeing through, afraid to speak, afraid to demand respect. Her sister's question pressed her to imagine a decade of this life, maybe 2. And with every imagined year, the warmth of love she had felt for Chinedu cooled, replaced by fear and exhaustion. She thought of herself at 50, still married, still silenced, still struggling for recognition and space in a home that was never fully hers. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She felt a heaviness settle over her, the kind that comes when reality collides with hope. She realized her sister was right. If she stayed, she might lose herself completely, her voice, her joy, her dreams, and the identity she had fought so hard to protect. Amaka pressed the phone to her chest and took a slow, shuddering breath. I think I see it now," she whispered, almost to herself. "I cannot live like that. Not for 10 years. Not for 20. Her sister's voice softened. "Then you already know what you must do. Amaka. Sometimes walking away is not defeat, it's survival." Amaka sat in silence for a long moment, the words sinking in. Survival. That was what this was about. Not pride, not stubbornness, not anger, but survival. She had spent 6 years believing in a dream that now felt fragile, threatened, and impossible to maintain. And in that quiet, heavy apartment in Lagos, she finally understood the truth she had been avoiding. To stay would be to lose herself entirely. Her hands trembled as she picked up a phone, her sister's words echoing in her mind. Survival meant making a choice, one she had not yet had the courage to take. But soon, she knew she would. The morning sunlight filtered through the apartment blinds, casting long stripes across the polished floor. Amaka sat on the edge of the bed, her suitcase open in front of her, empty and expectant. For a moment, she simply stared at it, feeling the weight of the decision she had made. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't beg for reconsideration. There were no dramatic scenes, no desperate pleas. Instead, she moved with a quiet determination, folding her clothes carefully, placing them neatly into the suitcase, each item a symbol of a life she was reclaiming. Her thoughts drifted briefly to the 6 years she had spent with Chinedu, the laughter, the late-night conversations, the promises of a shared future. A lump rose in her throat, but she swallowed it. This was not a time for regret. This was a time for action. She moved through the apartment with precision, gathering her essentials, packing the books she loved, the little trinkets she had arranged on shelves, even the plants she had nurtured. Each item went into the suitcase with care, as if she were taking not just possessions, but pieces of herself, leaving behind the parts that had been unrecognized, unseen, and undervalued. The apartment was silent, the usual noises of city life outside the window seeming distant and irrelevant. Chernihidu was still asleep in his corner of the bedroom, unaware of the quiet rebellion unfolding. He had made his choice, and now it was her turn to make hers. Amaka paused for a moment, hands resting on the half-packed suitcase. She thought about the confrontation with Ifunanya, the phone call from his mother, the cold withdrawal, and the failed attempts at compromise. Everything had led to this point. Everything had shown her that she would never be an equal in this household, that her voice would always be secondary to theirs. A sense of calm washed over her. She was leaving not out of anger, but out of self-respect. She was leaving not because she had failed, but because she had finally seen the truth. Slowly, methodically, she zipped up the suitcase, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. It was strange how heavy hope could feel when it was suppressed, and how light it became when she allowed herself to act. Before she left, she walked through the apartment one last time, touching the surfaces she had cared for, pausing to look out the window at the city below, Lagos, sprawling and alive, indifferent to her pain but full of possibilities. This city had witnessed her dreams and her heartbreak, but it would also witness her survival. Her phone buzzed quietly on the nightstand, but she ignored it. This was her moment, hers alone. She was reclaiming herself, her dignity intact, refusing to allow the walls of the apartment or the people in it to define her worth. As she slung the suitcase over her shoulder and opened the apartment door, a sense of quiet power accompanied each step she took. She did not look back. She did not glance at the man she had loved for 6 years, sleeping peacefully in the bed that had once been theirs. There was no need. Her decision was final, her resolve unwavering. Amaka stepped into the corridor, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and liberation. The city outside awaited her, vast and full of life, and for the first time in days, she felt the stirrings of possibility. She was leaving a house that never truly felt like Hayes, a marriage that had already silenced her voice, and a life that had demanded compromise at the cost of her self-respect. And in that act of quiet departure, she discovered something powerful. Survival could be elegant, and dignity could be preserved even in the face of heartbreak. The doors closed behind her, soft yet resolute, and Amaka walked into the Lagos morning carrying nothing but her courage, her self-respect, and the promise that she would not be diminished again. The bustling streets of Lagos was a blur of honking horns, the smell of street food, and the distant hum of city life. Amaka sat quietly, her suitcase beside her, staring out the window. Every passing billboard, every crowded market, every car weaving recklessly through traffic reminded her of the life she had left behind, but also of the freedom she was reclaiming. She arrived at Chernihidu's apartment one last time, not because she wanted to beg or plead, but because she needed him to hear the truth. She needed to speak the words that had been building inside her chest for days, words that no amount of silence could contain. The moment he opened the door, she felt the familiar ache in her heart, but she refused to let it weaken her. His expression shifted from surprise to irritation as he took in her suitcase and the determined look on her face. "Amaka, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice calm, almost patronizing. "I'm here to tell you the truth. Chernihidu," she said firmly, "I need you to understand what this marriage really is for me and what it always was for you." He raised an eyebrow, leaning against the doorframe. "And what's that?" Amaka drew in a deep breath, steadying her voice. "You never saw me as your partner. Not really. You never treated me as an equal. You didn't ask my opinion. You didn't protect me, and you didn't stand by me when your family attacked me." His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. She continued, "For 6 years, I believed we were building a life together. I believed we were partners in every sense, through distance, through struggles, through dreams. But from the 5th day of our marriage, it became clear that I was never more than a guest in your home. Your mother and your sister's opinions mattered more than mine. My voice was silenced, my presence disregarded." Chinedu's lips pressed into a thin line. "Amaka—" "No," she interrupted, shaking her head. "I am not done. I need you to hear this. You never asked me how I felt. You never considered my needs or my space. You made your family your priority before you ever made me your wife. And when I tried to compromise, when I tried to make space for all of you while still protecting my marriage, you refused. You made it clear that your decision was final, that your loyalty was not to me, but to them." His eyes flickered with something, defensiveness, guilt, or maybe annoyance, but she pressed on. "I loved you, Chinedu. I gave you 6 years of my heart, my trust, and my loyalty, and now I see that love alone wasn't enough. You never saw me as your partner. You never stood by me. You never made this marriage ours. It was never ours. It was always theirs, and I was just living in the shadow of the family you put above me." Amaka's hands were trembling, but her voice was unwavering. "I am leaving because I refuse to live like a guest in my own marriage. I refuse to let silence, fear, and disrespect define my life. You never made me a partner, Chinedu, and now I am reclaiming myself." Chinedu's face twisted in anger and disbelief. "So this is it? You are leaving because I want to care for my mother? You are calling me a bad husband for being loyal to my family." Amaka shook her head, stepping closer, meeting his eyes without fear. "This isn't about loyalty to your mother. This is about loyalty to me, to your wife. And you failed that test before it even began. You failed the only person who stood by you, who believed in you, and who loved you for 6 years. You failed me, Chinedu." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. He opened his mouth to speak, but she held up her hand, stopping him. "I have nothing more to say," she said. "I am leaving, not out of anger, but because I finally see the truth. You were never my partner, and I cannot stay where I am invisible, unheard, and unvalued." With that, she turned, picked up her suitcase, and walked toward the door. Each step was steady, each movement filled with resolve. She did not look back. Chinedu's voice finally broke the silence, shouting after her, but it sounded distant, hollow, powerless. She had made her choice. She had named the truth. And in doing so, she had reclaimed the dignity and freedom that 6 years of love had almost cost her. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in days, Amaka breathed freely. The weight on her chest lifted, replaced by the first real taste of liberation. She stepped out into the streets of Lagos, the city buzzing around her, and for the first time, she felt that the life ahead, though uncertain, was hazed to shape. The cab ride through the bustling streets of Lagos was a blur of honking horns, the smell of street food, and the distant hum of city life. Amaka sat quietly, her suitcase beside her, staring out the window. Every passing billboard, every crowded market, every car weaving recklessly through traffic reminded her of the life she had left behind, but also of the freedom she was reclaiming. She arrived at Chinedu's apartment one last time, not because she wanted to beg or plead, but because she needed him to hear the truth. She needed to speak the words that had been building inside her chest for days, words that no amount of silence could contain. The moment he opened the door, She felt the familiar ache in her heart, but she refused to let it weaken her. His expression shifted from surprise to irritation as he took in her suitcase and the determined look on her face. "Amaka, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice calm, almost patronizing. "I'm here to tell you the truth. Chinedu," she said firmly, "I need you to understand what this marriage really is for me and what it always was for you." He raised an eyebrow, leaning against the doorframe. "And what's that?" Amaka drew in a deep breath, steadying her voice. "You never saw me as your partner. Not really. You never treated me as an equal. You didn't ask my opinion. You didn't protect me. And you didn't stand by me when your family attacked me." His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. She continued, "For 6 years, I believe we were building a life together. I believe we were partners in every sense, through distance, through struggles, through dreams. But from the 5th day of our marriage, it became clear that I was never more than a guest in your home. Your mother and your sister's opinions mattered more than mine. My voice was silenced, my presence disregarded." Chinedu's lips pressed into a thin line. "Amaka." "No," she interrupted, shaking her head. "I am not done. I need you to hear this. You never asked me how I felt. You never considered my needs or my space. You made your family your priority before you ever made me your wife. And when I tried to compromise, when I tried to make space for all of you while still protecting my marriage, you refused. You made it clear that your decision was final, that your loyalty was not to me, but to them." His eyes flickered with something, defensiveness, guilt, or maybe annoyance, but she pressed on. "I loved you. Chinedu, I gave you 6 years of my heart, my trust, and my loyalty, and now I see that love alone wasn't enough. You never saw me as your partner. You never stood by me. You never made this marriage ours. It was never ours. It was always theirs, and I was just living in the shadow of the family you put above me." Amaka's hands were trembling, but her voice was unwavering. "I am leaving because I refuse to live like a guest in my own marriage. I refuse to let silence, fear, and disrespect define my life. You never made me a partner, Chinedu, and now I'm reclaiming myself." Chinedu's face twisted in anger and disbelief. "So this is it? You are leaving because I want to care for my mother? You are calling me a bad husband for being loyal to my family." Amaka shook her head, stepping closer, meeting his eyes without fear. "This isn't about loyalty to your mother. This is about loyalty to me, to your wife. And you failed that test before it even began. You failed the only person who stood by you, who believed in you, and who loved you for 6 years. You failed me, Chinedu." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. He opened his mouth to speak, but she held up her hand, stopping him. "I have nothing more to say," she said. "I am leaving, not out of anger, but because I finally see the truth. You were never my partner, and I cannot stay where I am invisible, unheard, and unvalued." With that, she turned, picked up her suitcase, and walked toward the door. Each step was steady, each movement filled with resolve. She did not look back. Chinedu's voice finally broke the silence, shouting after her, but it sounded distant, hollow, powerless. She had made her choice. She had named the truth. And in doing so, she had reclaimed the dignity and freedom that 6 years of love had almost cost her. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in days, Amaka breathed freely. The weight on her chest lifted, replaced by the first real taste of liberation. She stepped out into the streets of Lagos, the city buzzing around her, and for the first time, she felt that the life ahead, though uncertain, was hazed to shape. The realization stung, but it also clarified her priorities. Survival, dignity, and self-respect mattered more than clinging to a relationship that diminished her. She moved into a small, modest apartment in Victoria Island, a place of her own making. Every corner reflected her choices. Her books on the shelves, her favorite artworks on the walls, the soft lighting she preferred in the evenings. For the first time, the space felt truly hers, unclaimed and unchallenged by anyone else's presence. Evenings were no longer haunted by the cold glances of Chinedu or the sharp words of his mother. Instead, they were filled with quiet reflection, journaling her thoughts, planning her future, and allowing herself to dream again. She discovered small joys she had forgotten: the taste of freshly brewed coffee in the morning, the satisfaction of a day well spent at work, the freedom to take a walk through the city streets without fear or expectation. She thought about the friends who had quietly stood by her, offering advice, listening without judgment, and reminding her that love was not always enough to keep someone faithful or respectful. She leaned on them, realizing that the connections she nurtured now were genuine and reciprocal, unlike the conditional attachment she had endured in her marriage. And then there were moments of reflection, moments when she would close her eyes and think back to Chinedu and the apartment she had left. The sting of betrayal still lingered, but she no longer let it define her. Instead, it became a lesson that love could be patient, but it should never be blind to disrespect, that loyalty deserved recognition, not silence, and that survival often meant making the hardest choices first. Amaka began setting goals again. She planned trips to cities she had always wanted to explore, considered furthering her studies, and even toyed with starting her own business. Each plan, each small victory, was a reminder that she was not defined by a failed marriage but by the strength and resilience she carried within herself. In the quiet of her apartment, she smiled softly. The world outside continued its relentless pace, indifferent to her pain and triumph alike. Yet in that chaos, she felt something precious, a sense of control over her own life. Leaving Chinedu had not been easy, but it had been necessary. And now, as she navigated the days, weeks, and months that followed, she realized that survival was not a punishment. It was freedom. It was reclaiming herself from a life that had tried to suppress her voice, her dreams, and her dignity. For the first time in years, Amaka understood that healing was not about forgetting the past. It was about learning to thrive despite it. And in that understanding, she found a quiet, steady hope for the future, one built entirely on her own terms. Months had passed since Amaka walked out of Chinedu's apartment, since she closed the door on a life that had already silenced her. The days blurred together at first, long work hours, calls with friends, quiet dinners alone, but over time, a rhythm returned. The city of Lagos moved on around her, as indifferent and relentless as ever, but within her, a strange calm had settled. She often sat by the large window of her apartment in Victoria Island, looking out at the streets below, the hawkers calling out, the cars weaving through traffic, the children running between stalls, and wondered how different life could have been if she had chosen to endure. She thought about Chinedu, his mother, and Ifunanya. She thought about the moments that had hurt the most, the breakfast confrontation, the invasion of her space, the cold dismissal, the legal proceedings, the gossip that had cast her as a villain. Her heart still ached at times, but it was no longer raw. It was reflective. She asked herself the question that haunted her most. Had she overreacted? Had walking away so quickly been too harsh, too impulsive? Would patience, compromise, or endurance have eventually softened the walls Chinedu had built around his family's influence? She imagined herself staying. 10 years of subtle silences. 20 years of tiptoeing around a mother-in-law's opinions. A lifetime of choosing peace over her own voice. Could she have survived without losing herself entirely? Could love alone have sustained a marriage where she was never truly an equal? Amaka shook her head, pushing the questions aside for the moment. Perhaps she had overreacted. Perhaps she had acted too soon. But then she remembered the fear she felt in that apartment, the weight pressing on her chest, the night she had barely slept because she realized she was already an outsider in her own home. Survival had called her, and she had answered, and yet the questions lingered uncomfortably. Was leaving truly freedom, or was it the first act of a life that would now always carry the shadow of what if? Was she stronger for walking away, or had she fled from challenges she could have faced? She could not answer. The reflection spiraled endlessly, shifting from moments of doubt to quiet affirmation. In some ways, she felt relief, the relief of no longer being trapped in a life that never fully accepted her. But in others, a lingering sting of uncertainty remained, like a shadow she could not shake. The city moved on outside her window, indifferent and unyielding. Lagos, with its noise, chaos, and vibrancy, reminded her that life never stops, no matter the heartbreak, the decisions, or the regrets. And within her, a quiet tension remained, a question that had no answer yet. Had she overreacted, or had she escaped a lifetime of quiet suffering? Amaka leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the horizon, and let the city's pulse match her own. The story, much like her thoughts, remained unresolved. The answer, if it ever came, would belong only to her. The door to the future remained closed but waiting, and Amaka, for now, simply existed in the stillness, carrying both relief and doubt in equal measure, knowing that the next chapter, her true chapter, was yet to be written.